Okay, so do you want a secret? If you're going from your highest pond to your lowest pond, and you're taking water off your highest pond, the further away you get from that pond, the lower your pressure is going to become. So trying to use sprinklers and to fill like watering tanks for your cattle or sheep or whatever takes longer because your pressure is lower. So this is the thing. If we're using 2-inch out of the pond, so if we're working on the pond or lake, the bigger the PVC pipe, the better, because it's more volume. And if you get that large volume going down there, we can take a 6-inch pipe, reduce it into a 4-inch pipe, and then reduce it into a 2-inch pipe. And every time we reduce it, it increases that volume and pressure. Isn't that cool? So again, if we're going down, this is a 2-inch pipe by the way, but for example, if we were going down with a 4-inch pipe and we put like a pressure monitor here, and we just don't have enough pressure to effectively water with at least 40 pounds pressure or something around there, then we could just take a reducer and we could put it on the PVC, and this reducer is a 1.5-inch reducer. So we go from a 2-inch to a 1.5-inch, and that will increase your pressure. So the further away that you get from your highest pond, the lower the pressure is going to become. Because we're using gravity to feed this whole system, gravity doesn't have a great deal of pressure. I mean, it does, but how we increase it using our brain power is just to reduce the side. So this pipe had 30 pounds pressure. Once we reduce it down to 1.5 inches, it'll probably go up to 40 or 45 pounds pressure again. So, and the further away you get, the more you want to keep on reducing it. So now we're at 1.5, and then we'll go down to a 1-inch. And then the 1-inch will eventually go down to like a black poly pipe, 3/4 inch. And the black poly pipes I only use for running my runs for like the family garden, to have a sprinkler system hitting the family garden, or I use all those poly runs off of the PVC with a T on it, just run a poly run to every watering tank in every paddock. Because PVC pipe is cheap, as you'll see down below, really cheap. A poly pipe, black poly pipe is cheap. You can get a 100, 200 foot roll for practically nothing. So we use the poly pipe to come off the PVC and to do our runs. Put a T here, and we run one to a watering tank, paddock number 1. Put a T here, and we do a run to the watering tank on paddock number 2. Put a T here, and we do a watering back poly pipe run to paddock number 3 watering tank. Like that. So, and when we get further and further away from pond number 1, we're down to 3/4 inch, and that's as low as we'll go. To maintain water volume, get enough water and pressure out of that pipe. So the bigger we start with, the more volume. And as we keep on downsizing it, that volume will go all the way down to a 3/4 inch pipe, and every time we go down in the pipe size, we increase our pressure again. So when it comes out of the lake, it might only be 30 pounds with a 6-inch PVC pipe. But then when you go down to a 4-inch, it might go up to 45. Like that. Or you might just maintain your pressure, 30 pounds all the way through, because you keep on reducing size. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the video. Stay tuned to the end. So one of the secrets we're going to do is we're going to, as we go down from lake number 1, coming out with 6-inch and then going down to 4-inch, about 1/4 of the way, you should install a pressure gauge into your PVC pipe. So it just screws right in there. And then put a 6-inch, just cut scraps of your 6-inch pipe, just cut them, and maybe a foot, and then dig a hole and just set that right over the top of your gauge so that you can protect that gauge. And then just put a 6-inch cap on top of that. So as you're going down from lake number 1 and heading, downhill, gradual downhill with your piping, you can put in about every quarter of the way, so if you're going 100 acres, about every 25 acres, you want to install a pressure gauge so you can see if you're losing pressure at that point. And that will tell you that you need to install a reducer. And after the reducer, you'll go another 25 acres, you install another one, and you're trying to maintain at least 30 pounds pressure, which is pretty low. But the main premise is don't worry so much about the pressure, but notice when you're losing pressure, that's the time that you need to reduce it from whatever your previous size pipe is down. So again, lake number 1, we're coming out with as large a pipe as possible. As soon as we're pulling off that and watering whatever we're watering, it's probably going to lose some pressure. And the further away you go from that lake, probably the lower pressure you're going to have. So the minute you know that you have lower pressure, you want to put your pressure gauge there and then reduce the pipe. And then go another 25 acres and put a pressure gauge, reduce the pipe. Another 25 acres, for example, by the way, this isn't exact. You have to look at your pressure, but so another 25 acres, install a gauge with a 6-inch round protector PVC tube over it with a lid on it, so that you can go from time to time and go check all your water gauges to make sure you have adequate water pressure through your whole system. Is that cool or is that cool? So the next thing we're going to talk about is what's called a spillway. So there is our pond, and then when it gets filled up, we need to have a spillway where our overflow goes, there's a bank that goes all the way around the pond. There'll be just one part of that, like a 10 or 15 section foot, that is like 2 foot lower than the rest of the banks of the pond, which is what we're looking at right here. And when it rains and we get these torrential downpours, we want that water to move through that spillway and start moving down a ditch. Some people call it a creek, but a ditch, to move on to our next lake. There's the spillway coming off the big lake, and then it comes over the spillway wall right there. Right there is the spillway, and then it goes into a ditch. Sometimes it's called a swale, and that's probably about 3 foot deep. You can see they got rocks all along the banks, and it just moves all the way downhill, so gravity fed downhill like a little river to your next lake. Or if you're not going to put a second lake in, we just want to keep on keeping the water as long as possible on our property. So we could do little spillways inside of this. So we could build up a small wall here with an indentation here to hold water back here. So, and each one of these becomes like a mini pond. And the main purpose to get here, the main principle, is to hold water on your land as long as possible, to cause this kind of irrigation and greenage all around here. And a lot of properties are just brown and they have no water until it rains. But this whole surrounding area is just so beautiful because it is surrounded by green, lush vegetation. And they do that by keeping water on their land. This may seep out 20 and 30 feet outside of just this little 4 foot wide ditch. So it hydrates. Think of the acreage. After you run it for 200 yards or 300 or there goes a nice sized fish right there. That's great. So the fish came over the spillway into our little river. So this is pretty cool. Another thing I want to point out, you see these rocks that they put here on purpose? All those rocks, when you're cleaning your fields out and putting your pastures in, do not throw those rocks out. Look at the size of that fish. Could you see it? Do not throw your rocks out. Save all your rocks, and we're going to put those around our culvert pipes, and we're going to put it on the banks of our ditches and swales. And that way, if a lot of water comes here quickly, that will stop any bank erosion. We're also going to talk about planting trees in just a minute, but let's just take a look at this and appreciate what we have here. What a great job they did. You see how much water this holds on the land? It's just extraordinary. It doesn't look like a lot until you start looking closer, but that's 3 foot deep, and you could probably see it has a current. Just that little foot drop from the pond number 1 to pond number 2, and it causes that kind of current to go through it. Little walk pathway they have going around all their ponds. I love it. And you get to not just put in these irrigation systems, but make your property a artwork. It's an expression of who you are and how well you want your property to look for others to enjoy. You see all the big rocks they put in here for habitat, right there and right there. Instead of making a rock wall, or worse, just throwing them over a bank, why don't we use all of our natural resources that Mother Earth gave to us to create landscaping and functional waterways that use rocks and other debris for a purpose? I think it's great what they did here. So there, it's going to go underneath their driveway, and there is a huge culvert pipe right there. And they dumped, looks like they took up their old driveway, jackhammered it, and they put all this around the bank so that it doesn't wash out. And here's the other side of the driveway where the culvert pipe comes out right there and continues on to that lake that you can see right out there, that lake right there. Okay, so that's where it comes out underneath their driveway, and the culvert pipe is right there, and then just starts flowing to lake number 2. What's amazing about this right here is that on your dam walls around your lake, you don't want to plant trees on those. A lot of people think if you plant trees on those dam walls, the roots will hold the dam wall together around your pond, but that's not true. Those roots find the water, and then, just like a PVC pipe, the water tries to get around the roots to get out of that. So the more trees you have around your pond, on the walls of your pond, the weaker it is. But it's different on ditches and swales. You want to put trees, as you see here. There's rows after rows of trees. So what's amazing here is that, all different kinds of trees have different water requirements. The bigger the water requirement, the closer you want the tree. So you see here that they have different rows of trees, and they're all at different varying lengths away from the ditch, which is right over there. So this is how we use ditches and swales. I like putting trees all the way down the ditches to stop erosion. So if those banks overfill, these trees' roots are really protecting the washout of the shoreline. So in every tree, you should position based on the type of tree and put different trees closer to the ditch for more water, and trees that don't require so much water further away from the ditch. So what I mean by that, like we're in zone number 10 here in Florida, and let's see, lemon trees use about 17 gallons of water a day, or 135 gallons of water per day in the summer. Is that ridiculous? Avocado trees use about 20 gallons of water per day on the average, and hence should be placed 2 rows away. So this is what I would say, is that citrus trees have a great deal of water, and they need well-drained, solid, like sandy soils. So here, being in zone number 10, we have sandy soils, and we're going to put our first row out here closest to the water, to the ditch, will be citrus trees because they require more water than others. And then our second row is going to be avocado trees. So right here you can see another second row going down and around, and those are going to be avocado trees because avocados require 20 gallons of water per day on the average, and hence should be placed in row number 2 of your ditches and swales. And then mango trees require about 26 gallons per week. So divided by 7 days, that's not much water. That should be So here you got one row going down here of citrus, one row of avocado, and one row of mango trees. And we move them further and further away from the ditch based on their requirements. Get the idea? The whole thing is to mimic nature and put trees and resources where they belong to save us from having to build and maintain infrastructures and labor in order to have our farms thrive. So, and I just want to give you a little note here. Many fruit-bearing trees need pollination. There is typically an A-type tree and a B-type tree, and that will cross-pollinate with each other. The fruit tree you choose will determine the number of each that you will need from a Class A or Class B. For example, some orange trees say that you can have 3 B or female type trees for every 1 A type tree, which is, you know, basically a male. So you'll have to know that when you're putting it in, and then you would do like 3 orange trees, A, type A, and then 1 B tree, and then 3 more A trees, and then 1 B tree. So you want to stagger them. And then, unlike most orchards, commercial orchards, we don't want to put the same thing in every row. You want to do the first row for citrus, then avocado, then mango. And when you mix it up like that, disease doesn't burn through whole orchards, because every variety has different pressures, different disease. So when we split it up even a little bit, it helps ensure that we don't lose whole crops and whole trees. Does that make sense? All right, so we're following this ditch down to lake number 2, and we're going to take a look at lake number 2 and how it uses the overflow through lake number 1 to fill lake number 2. But all along the way, we can put swales in our ditches to hold water there longer before it gets to lake number 2. So it's like mini ponds that keep on getting built until it gets to lake number 2. And here we are, lake number 2. So that's, let me just show you where it comes out. And here's all the gigantic rocks again, just a really great job. And there it comes out, and there's a big swale right there, or a wall, right where you see those bushes. And there's a little dip right here where it pours into the lake. Isn't that great? So today we're in Central Florida and looking at this pond system, which is a growing area called 9B. There are many different varieties of trees that we could plant here up against this ditch in Florida with varying needs for water consumption, like lemon trees, key lime trees, orange trees, tangerine trees, banana trees, loquat trees, avocado trees, kiwi trees, mango trees, sugar apple trees, dragon fruit trees, star fruit trees, lychee trees, passion fruit trees, and my favorite, jackfruit trees. You'll want to decide if you are growing commercial production or family and friends production, and this will tell you how sophisticated your irrigation system will need to be. Don't worry, because your system in this video is built to scale. That is, you can just, you know, there's enough pipe when you put a gigantic PVC pipe, a 6-inch, in your first lake. There's plenty of pressure to keep on tapping off that with your 3/4 inch poly lines. So it's built so you can expand. So you might start out with a family and friends type farm and then quickly grow into a full commercial irrigation system on a commercial farm. But don't worry, because your system in this video is built to scale, and you can grow in semi-commercial or commercial irrigation design easily. First you want to determine what grow zone you're in. So there's 11 grow zones in the United States, North America rather, and you want to know which one you're in. Once you know, so you just Google that, what grow zone am I in, and put in your city and state, and then it will tell you. And then you can go on to Google and you can put in what trees, fruit trees or whatever, nut trees or whatever, grow in this zone, and what is the water consumption of each one of those trees. So you just heard me read off like 30 different trees for this area that we're in, 9B, and all those trees would grow here, and they all have different varying water consumptions. And again, that tells us how close to the ditches that we want to put those trees so they can help themselves to water, and we don't need to run irrigation or put in extra infrastructure just to water them. By simply placing them in the proper area that Mother Nature kind of dictates, we let them take care of themselves. Get the idea? So this section is on planning your produce production. First question is, what type of soil do you have and what is your growing zone? In the USA, there's 11 different growing zones, and each of those has its own best crop to be grown on each of their specific zones. Once you know your zone, you can Google what type of produce best grows in that zone. This will inform you on the type of crops and the water needed for those crops. The 3/4 inch poly pipe is the feeder pipe that comes off of your larger diameter PVC piping and irrigates all of these crops that we're talking about. You can put manual timers on it, that is non-electrical timers, or battery operated timers if you choose, or simply manual irrigation as needed if it's just a smaller operation. Again, properly placed crops on your farm would ideally need little irrigation as stated earlier. Next question, are you growing a family and friends garden or a commercial operation to make money for the farm? If it's commercial, I always Google what is the most profitable produce to grow in zone 10 for ideas. Or we're in zone 9B or 10, 9B, 10-ish. And I could Google what is the most profitable produce to grow in zone 10, and it will tell me all the different crops that I can make the most money on. So if it's a commercial operation, it's about making money, right?